So anyways, my name is Michael Emry with Tvoi News. How you doing, Lawerence?
Pleased to meet you.
Yeah. So you won the election. That was a windfall. We didn't think that would happen.
You know, after I won the primary, I really did think we'd win the election. I didn't expect the amount of money to be spent in the general that was against me. You know, in the last couple of weeks, there was over 200,000 dropped in by some of the more liberal organizations, you know, mostly the teachers union and some of those. So.
Well, I wonder why it is that the teachers union seems to be the one on the more drastic step of the liberal side. I don't even know if you want to call it democratic side. It's almost, I don't know what to make of some of it.
You know, I think some of the liberal organizations just tend to donate money to the National Education Association, and I think it gives them that power to make it, to give it out in the state of Idaho, or to spend it in the state of Idaho.
Well, I've seen a big rift between people because of the internet and social media, and now like you have Common Core coming through, and you have all these other instances. The teachers are in direct opposition to this Common Core and things like that, but the teachers union itself is still passing the ball on where it is not accepted by even the people that work underneath them.
You know, yeah, I think Common Core, I think, stirred up a lot of people, both on the conservative and on the teacher side. You know, simply because it's something that's unknown and it's top-down driven, and you know, the people never like that.
No, and you know, there's such a miscommunication between our government anymore and the people. There's a wider road between us now, because where business as usual from 20 years ago, everyone seems to be thinking that that's effective. Now we have a communication system within seconds we can transmit information, and because of that, the mainstream media seems to be dying because they're playing politics.
You know, and certainly the mainstream media is playing politics, and they're, you know, read some of the editorials, and they're just they're crazy. You know, this one of those examples, and coming from the legislative background, you know, this child support legislation that the special session is coming up on.
Yeah.
You know, that you know, the mainstream media just crucified those 9 legislators that chose to vote against that. Well, they were doing their job. You know, they were asking the tough questions, and they weren't getting good answers to those questions, and so they did what they should do, and that's voted against it. And of course, the mainstream media just crucified them. You know, why do they hate kids and broken homes and all that? So
I'm sure glad you mentioned SB 67, because we're throwing the information out there. Tvoi News with Vicki Davis and some of our writers were the ones, and David Hoffman actually went out, talked to a few of the legislators, and got them to stop in their tracks for a minute and look at the information.
Well, you know, the red flags went up for me, and I happened to have some time, and I watched the hearing on SB 1067.
It's 1067.
And you know, what stood out to me was that the state was presenting the bill, and they said, you have to accept this as it is, you can't amend it, and then the questions that were being asked were coming back to, you have to accept this, you can't amend it, and certainly, you know, that's not the way to pass legislation. If they had said, yes, you can amend this, you can, you know, you can make this a state bill, certainly I think the outcome would have been different in the original session, but they weren't willing to give anything, and even the bill that's been drafted, I don't think is substantially changed, but it has, but at least they did amend it.
Well, what they may have amended it, but in the functionality of it and the objections of it are all the same. Okay. So what I have here is some flyers we're putting out by Jeff Wright and Vicki Davis and a few other people that are very knowledgeable and fantastic researchers, and they've just dug into the bill for its intent. The feds and supporters of this bill are extorting 155 domestic support payments to force Idaho into international compliance for less than 200 international orders. Now, that's not something that the mainstream media was talking about. What they did was they came out and said, "Oh, if you don't pass this bill, you're not for the children.
You're going to put in jeopardy the entire child support system." And you know, you're right, that is a form of extortion, and you know, I suspect that at the end of the day that they will get their way, but at the same time, it's tough medicine to swallow.
You know, in this situation right here, anybody that votes against this will be held as a hero, and they think that they are going to save their votes. No, they're not. What's going to happen is that people are already fed up with all of these things. You know, the federal government. When is it that we say enough is enough to stand up as a state?
You know, and you bring up a good point. They will be held as a hero by some, but the mainstream media will crucify them just like they did the 9, and certainly, you know, that weighs on people, and you know, the message isn't going to be that you stood up for, you're a patriot and you stood up for what is right. It's going to be that you're a scumbag because you want these deadbeat dads to not have to pay child support, you know, and that's a tough balancing act for the legislators. You know, having been in that arena, you know, that tears your heart out, you know, to have people saying all those bad things about you.
Well, you know what, you say the mainstream media. Well, it's a fact that the mainstream media is dying. Their numbers are inflated. The alternative media is now the force of motion. Because if you say something, I can go back with a vast library, unheard of in precedents of humanity, and check out what's going on with it. And anybody that has intelligence and to seek the truth, they can.
Well, you know, and you also mentioned that what's going on now is turning off people, and they're not going out to vote, and they're not. Hopefully, this is turning around with the media that we have. That's not the mainstream. That is getting people educated of what's going on, and they will understand how important that vote is.
The first time. But Lawerence, is there anything you'd like to ask people out there that you'd like them to concentrate on, or anything that they can do to help their state move into the future?
You know, I think there is a lot that people can do to help the state, and that is to be informed and to get involved and stay involved. You know, and that's I preach this to young kids all the time, and there are a lot of young kids that come through our office now, and you know, I don't care what their politics turn out to be, as long as they are part of the solution and are involved. You know, that's what it takes. That's what a republic is about, is all the people being involved, and then we elect the representatives to represent us. But you can't do that unless you know where they stand.
So if anybody would like to know exactly what your responsibilities are as the Secretary of State, do you think you can kind of brief that down in a small summary, just kind of a little brief blurb?
Well, you know, we have several responsibilities. One of the larger ones is that we are the chief elections office in the state, and you know, we oversee the elections. The county clerks actually run the elections, but we're the overseer to make sure that everything is done right, and
like the sunshine reports.
And we do the sunshine reports, we do the lobbyist reports, all the election laws. We also, I also sit on the land board, and we discuss a wide variety of things on the land board.
Well, that deals with the land board, that deals with BLM and such?
That deals with actually just the management of the state lands.
Oh, okay.
You know, the state of Idaho, as statehood, was granted about 3 million acres. We should have got it all, but we were granted 3 million acres. And we still have about 2.5 million acres, and we manage those for the endowments, for the public schools, for the colleges and universities, and the other recipients of the endowments. So that's quite a responsibility, you know, to oversee that management.
Right.
We also take care of all the business filings in the state. If you start a business, you file with our office. We're more just a filing agency rather than anything else. We really have no authority to do any enforcement or anything, but all your business filings, all your lien filings and that kind of thing come through our office as well.
Well, I think the trust, you know, in the elections is something that everybody's desperately seeking. You know, I've been through this process. I was best for Ron Paul, and I've seen a lot of underhanded dealings within that election. And as time goes on, people have been disenfranchised by the election process. And I'd like to get it to where people are trusting that election process more, you know, and that's my hope, because I mean, I took an oath to protect and serve this nation. We're a nation of laws, but I think everyone should follow those laws. So when the elections come back around, if people out there in Idaho see some things that they find disturbing or objectionable within the voting process, can they come to the Secretary of State's office and report that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we want to hear anything that, you know, and I can tell you that if there is anything that's going on that we should know, we will investigate aggressively.
So it won't matter who, and I'm not going to bring up anything that's happened before you got in office, but I have seen that in the last election, and so many others have. So if we see something that, no matter who it comes from, maybe it's another news agency. You know, we want to report the truth, and I'll be the first to come out and say, hey, I was wrong, you were right, we just want the truth. But sometimes it seems like the mainstream media is trying to steer and manipulate the way the voting process is, to the point of even lying, without mentioning names, and that is disturbing, because people need to make an informed decision on who to vote for.
You know, if something needs to be changed, we're certainly willing to make changes.
Sure.
And I want to see the truth come out as well.
You know, mimicking is the best form of flattery, and I see a lot of other alternative news media and even the mainstream media kind of changing the tune, and they're forced to because of people like Jim State Patriot, Tvoi News, and others. And so, I mean, and even with SB 1067, they came out hardcore about, oh, the children. Well, it's the federal government that was threatening our children, not us. But so the truth does come out.
Well, you know, and you still got your work ahead of you to get it on out there to the rest of the people, you know, because there's still quite a few people that get all their news off the mainstream.
Well, that sure is, and so slowly but surely we're just kind of like the Paul Revere. We got some flyers here that we're going to put out for SB 67, and we're going to put it in everybody's box. And you know, we created Tvoi News, selling every single thing we possibly could sell. You know, there's no funding we have or anything. It's just been out of my heart and out of Becky's heart and many others, and help. And so when I was talking to Luker, he said, well, I had a lot of people come out against me. I said, how many of those people that gave you praise were paid for it versus the people that didn't give you praise that were paid for it? And that stopped him in his tracks, because most of these people get a paycheck for being disgruntlement to you or giving you a hard time. They really do. You know, whether it's a lobbyist or whether it's somebody in some big news agency or something like that. You know, we've watched the row for a few years.
You know, I look at the social media, and one thing that always bothers me is some of these blogs. You don't have to put who you are, put your name on there, and it really gets nasty sometimes because the people are not identified. And I like to know who's attacking me, you know, but it's their First Amendment right to say what they want to say, but I think they should identify themselves.
Well, to some extent I agree, but if you'll notice that if somebody attacks somebody on something that doesn't have any merit, you will have a lot of people coming out of the woodwork to defend you.
Yeah.
And by the way, there is actually organizations that they hire for political means that go out and do nothing but straw man arguments, and they're called trolls. And they're actually literally paid. Some of them are not even in this nation. So if you've got a campaign you're running and you want to try to steer the public opinion, you can go to a company like Nevicate and you can hire them. And they will guide and monitor the social media and have 4 or 5 people posing as 6 or 7 or 8 different people to make it sound like that, oh, we're powerful. There's only one person going. So you must consider that some of the trolls that are out there, most people really are not that vicious and brutal to be like that. But there are some.
Well, I would like to see those trolls identified too.
Well, you know, we've done some research on that, and it's pretty easy to identify. The only problem is that if we do open that can of worms, that means there needs to be charges placed on some people because it's actually illegal. This is one of the things that's frustrating for a lot of people in the state of Idaho that I've seen as well as myself, is when you do expose a crime, what do you do when Jeffrey Dahmer is the one that's sitting on his own court case? This is the problem, and this is why the disenfranchisement of the public is so large, because there's so many cases like Benghazi and what happened with that, this thing that really obsessed me the most is, and I'll make this brief, Benghazi was Trey Gowdy exposing that not only did they know about the act, they lied about it, they got caught lying about it, and they had a full stand down to allow Stevens, the rest of them, to die, and allow those weapons into the hands of what is now ISIS. And we can't even get Eric Holder to place even summons out. So, and the scariest part of it all is there was like 400 Stinger missiles that got in the hands of those people with the selective enforcement of our borders. We actually are in danger because of criminal activity of the federal government.
Right.
And that's my concern. You can't even get on a plane without the worry of maybe a Stinger missile outside of an airport. And so people look at these games going on, but we're really in more danger now than we ever have been. So this is one of the glaring situations that the political machine does not want to address. And I know that's probably not part of your office, but it's still a concern of the citizens that I know.
We still have the power to take it back, and what you're doing is helping that. You know, but we need to have you multiplied by 10.
Well, we're working on that actually. We're getting ready to do a little bit of money.
Or multiplied by 100. You know,
citizen journalism, things of that nature. We're coming up in the ranks. I want to help support any other alternative media like Jim State Patriot as well. And I think together we can make this nation a better nation.
Well, I don't think we have a choice. I think we have to, or our children are not going to know any of the freedoms that you and I have known.
Well, on a last note, if you could say anything more to the public out there, what would you like to tell them? You know, that they can do, or to even help work together with the Secretary of State's office.
You know, as far as our office goes, certainly, if they know of anything that's going on that we should know about, give us a call. You know, we will investigate, and we will take care of any findings as well. Okay. You know, we want to make sure that our elections are run fairly and honestly, and that there's no fraud and there's no corruption or anything in them. And you know, everything we do is going towards that effort to make sure that the people can be confident that their elections are run fairly and honestly, and that their vote counts, and that there's not people that are voting twice or 10 times. That, you know, that their vote is equal to everybody else's vote.
Well, you know, Lawerence Denney, I really appreciate it. I thank you so much. Thank you. And this is TVOI News, and hey, if you all get a chance, we've got some flyers that are online that you can print out. Spread them everywhere.